All right, Mumi, what are we talking about today?
What was that anime that...
What?
I can't start a video and be like, hey, here's an anime you've never heard of, Shonan Bakusouzoku. I'll just close the video.
Yeah, let's review that.
What?
In the quiet coastal region of Shonan, kids just aren't alright. Join Eguchi and his friends, the Shonan Bombers, as they carve out a place for themselves in this quiet seaside town. But they'll have to fight their way through every group in town to do it. Will they be able to immortalize themselves? Or will they just be another flash in the pan? Race on down, cause the gang's all here watching Shonan Bakusouzoku. Thank God we're talking about something that's not a seasonal.
A little bit of a change of pace.
Been waiting for this.
So yeah, we're talking about Shonan Bakusouzoku today. Almost no one has talked about this OVA. Only Kenny, really.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's because this has not been subbed for the longest time.
No, I mean, even Kenny talked about in his video, you had the first episode on VHS subbed for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then nothing else. It's only this last year that it finally finished getting subtitled completely.
Yeah. I'm surprised that this is not considered one of the all-time classics of the 80s and 90s because it's gorgeous, it's a lot of fun, it just has really broad appeal. I feel like anyone could probably enjoy this anime.
Well, it's probably just a matter of it being available, right?
Yeah, and it only got a Blu-ray release in Japan relatively recently. Hopefully now that it's fully subbed in English and stuff, maybe it'll catch on. Maybe we're gonna be the trendsetters for once instead of being the trend chasers.
Clout chasers. Yeah, it definitely deserves a lot more recognition than it's getting. To get into the production of it a little bit, it's not a TV series despite the fact that it's 12 episodes.
No, it's 12 one-hour episodes that came out sporadically.
Yeah, from 1986 to 1999. Legend of Galactic Heroes literally started 2 years after this and ended 2 years before.
Is this the longest running OVA series of all time?
It could possibly be. I know people talk about Giant Robo's production.
Yeah.
But this definitely puts Giant Robo's 7-8 years or whatever it is.
Yeah. This is what, 13?
Yeah, 13 whole years.
Yeah. And it remains relatively stylistically consistent.
Surprisingly, yeah. I mean, there's an obvious kind of shift in the colors and stuff like that.
Especially in the background art about halfway through because they shift art directors.
Yeah.
And in terms of the aesthetics, there are also a lot of scenes in this show that just feel if you just panned over to one side, you just have some guy just belting out a guitar solo.
I can see that.
The girls in the show are really cute too. I really like their designs. They're not really sexualized in any way, but they have that very cute 80s look to them.
Well, you say that, but then in episode 11, they have this one shot of them getting changed. It's so out of place and weird.
Yeah, that was weird.
It just came out of left field for this show.
This show has been so pure up to this point.
It's not it shows them nude or anything.
No. It's very much your typical changing scene, but your typical changing scene is racy as shit for this anime.
Yeah.
Is what we're trying to get across. And no, that's not a goddamn pun.
So each episode's an hour long, and it kind of works on an A plot, B plot kind of structure, right?
Yeah, every episode kind of feels like a mini movie.
Yeah. Overall, every episode kind of just flows really well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's really an episode I can point to that is just a slog to get through.
Right. Despite it being an hour long, it doesn't feel that long for each episode.
No.
It's very episodic, very slice of life.
Right. Each episode's kind of varied and kind of allows for them to explore different facets of the characters. You had the boxing episode, and then you got a surfing episode. They go on a school trip.
A foreign lady comes to visit with some really stellar English.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
Which I think my favorite episode of all these probably was episode 8, which is just a massive flashback episode, which is just the origin story of the bombers.
Oh, yeah.
Which 20 minutes of it was done in just monochrome.
Yeah, so was that actually filmed on black and white film? Or did they do what they did for the last episode of Gunbuster where they actually painted it black and white?
Oh no, they did Gunbuster. Because
okay.
you can see it from because they have moments where there's red.
Right. There are brief moments of color interspersed, which is interesting.
If you're familiar with the Gunbuster production, that was crazy expensive for them to do. But it wasn't a waste because this whole fucking episode was just pure keto.
Oh yeah.
It really does get across this unspoken bond that they have with the previous generation. This was kind of directed in large part by Nobutaka Nishizawa. who is kind of fucking underrated.
I have no idea who they are, so
He directed the TV adaptations of Galaxy Express 39, which I absolutely fucking adore, and Slam Dunk.
Oh, okay. So just relatively obscure, lesser known TV series.
No, nobody
Some
does
underground
those.
stuff. Yeah, I get it.
He has done like Legendary Gambler, like Tetsuya.
Okay.
And he did the second volume of Crying Freeman, the OVA. So he kind of seems to gravitate toward these kind of series. That being said, people have probably gathered how I'm like really into magical girls or whatever.
We are painfully aware.
What's probably not as well documented is like my affinity for, you know, the
Manime?
So I don't want to say like manime, because manime is a very broad term, right?
Yeah.
Great Teacher Onizuka and Kaiji would fall under that same umbrella as like Fist of the North Star. And
These are all very different series you're listing off.
You know, stuff specifically like in Ashino Joe and Kaiji, series that kind of capture just more of like the pathos of just living as like your average man in the world. Nishizawa is notably quite adept at capturing that. Like I always point to this one moment in like Galaxy Express in episode 86. Tetsuro's helping this other character, and it leads to him kind of lamenting how he was never able to really spend like quality time with his father, and he didn't get to know him when he was older, where he could kind of do little things to kind of show his appreciation for him. That moment really like struck a chord with me while I was watching the show. And while you could kind of easily attribute that to Leiji Matsumoto, I think it does show a strength of Nishizawa's direction that's carried over into Shobaku. It's really kind of hard to like confirm these kind of things though, because there's not really a lot of interviews with the director or the original mangaka.
Yeah, I was trying to like just look up some stuff beforehand and I couldn't really find anything.
No, the best I was able to do is just read the manga.
Okay. The manga's translated?
Even though it ran for 16 volumes and for 6 years, I was only able to find the first 6 chapters translated.
Oh, rip.
The series starts in media res, right?
Right.
But the manga has got a much more like traditional setup,
Okay.
which funny enough answered quite a few of the questions I had when I finished the series.
Like what?
Like just in the first chapter, it shows you kind of like how Eguchi was roped into joining the Shonan Bombers and becoming like the leader or whatever.
Okay, yeah, because that's never really explained in the anime.
No, there's a lot that's kind of introduced in the manga that never was really touched on in the anime, but I think the changes were for the best.
Yeah.
The prevalent kind of existence of delinquent series is kind of interesting to me. They're two things that you don't generally associate together.
Otaku and delinquents.
Yeah. Like, obviously, you can have delinquent-esque characters that are, like, reading manga or something. Like,
yeah.
It's not rare to see them reading Dragon Ball or what, you know, whatever's popular.
Yeah, of course.
But they're not exactly like otaku.
No.
Likewise, you don't really associate a mangaka or, like, an otaku being, you know, a miscreant. You just don't immediately link the two together. Yet, despite that, we see this like continued romanticism of delinquents in anime and manga, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, shit, look at like, I don't know, a part 4 of JoJo.
Yeah. I would be interested to know if Josuke was inspired by Eguchi at all.
I was thinking about that a little bit because part 4 was 92?
Yeah, it started in 92.
Yeah, so that would be interesting.
3代目じゃないの?
そうか。どこ走ってんのかな?
If I had to guess as to like why, I would venture to guess it had something to do with like Chunibyo. Not the show, but like the phenomena that the show is named
eighth
after.
grader syndrome or whatever the fuck?
Yeah, 8th grader syndrome.
Chuni.
You know, it's roughly referring to that stage of development where kids are kind of growing into adults and they're trying to like find their place in the world.
Right.
And it can kind of manifest itself as them kind of imitating fictional characters that they admire, like Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho being like the most well-known one, I think. Obviously, that phenomena is not just like exclusively a Japanese one.
Of course,
we're just
right.
fucking weebs that are just using a Japanese lexicon because we're talking about a fucking Japanese cartoon. Obviously, you got like the whole phenomena of like bodybuilders and hype content, watching like Tom Platz videos. Hell, even like the fucking recent Sigma male fucking shit.
Oh, of course, exactly.
You know, we all kind of feel that to a degree in our lives, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think there's like this sort of like kindred spirit element to delinquents and like people that do like anime. When you think about like delinquents in the real world, they're generally like youth that just kind of found themselves lacking positive guidance in their lives.
Right.
And they kind of just look to alternative means. There's actually like an interview with Tetsuhara, the creator of Fist of the North Star, which he's kind of talking about his inspiration for making Ken like the kind of like paragon of morality or whatever fuck, was kind of his own inability to like take action when he saw injustices in the world.
Okay.
I think that kind of speaks to this desire to act outside of these perceived societal norms. But like even deeper than that, I think people kind of romanticize like delinquent culture. At least what's kind of appealed to me with like delinquent series is like the lack of like pretense.
Mm-hmm.
Delinquents are often portrayed as like very kind of honest, straightforward kind of characters.
Yeah, if there's one thing that Shobaku does not have, it is a lot of subtext or subtlety. It is 100% upfront.
Yeah, and that's kind of how delinquents are always kind of presented.
Yeah.
You know, if they're mad, they lash out. You know, the passive aggression and conniving is kind of looked down upon as like cowardly.
Yeah. Very hot-headed, yeah.
Yeah. As a result, they have a very clunky way of like navigating the world that has like this feeling of earnestness to it. It's why like I love series like Great Teacher Onizuka, which kind of cuts to the core of like the kids' issues and takes sort of a no-nonsense approach when trying to solve their problems.
Right.
It's not really worried about navigating the system that has like failed these kids in the first place. It meets them kind of where they're at and just like unapologetically is there to help them, which tying this back into Shonan Bakusouzoku specifically, it captures the
Bosozoku. Bosozoku. Well, it's interesting because while watching this, I was kind of reminded of a video, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago that Charlie put out, Critical, where he was talking about this problem that he had in anime where he felt like a lot of series were like set in high school when they didn't really need to be.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Which, you know, everyone's entitled to their opinions. I don't give a fuck. I guess someone who might not be aware of Bosozoku culture or anything like that might look at like a series like Shobaku and be like, why is this in high school anyway? These characters don't even look like they're in high school. They even make jokes about the fact that these characters don't look like they're in high school. But there's a very clear cultural context there for why these characters are in high school. You even see that reflected in like other stuff from the 80s. I mean, look at Akira.
Yeah.
You know?
And even like in this, there's a plot point in one of the later episodes that's specifically pointing to the words, which kind of best is translated to juvenile delinquent. There's this kind of like idea that being a delinquent is something that you do when you're young and you're kind of just expected to grow out of it.
Right.
It's kind of more evident with like the first chapter of the manga where we see like Mako is literally graduating from the gang and going off to college. And she's like, oh, y'all can all graduate from the gang next year when y'all finish high school. But yeah, Shobaku just kind of presents like that desire to get out on like the open road.
Yeah, it's got that very like free spirit pathos to it, which I quite like.
Yeah. While they do get into fist fights in the show, the characters are more interested in just riding together than like territorial disputes.
Yeah. If anything, the fights are like the most brutal and least romantic component of the entire show. It's not like there's like a really stark tonal change, but it is like markedly like different in how it like depicts like characters beating the shit out of each other compared to everything else in the show.
It's not like a Naruto or a Dragon Ball where they're like punching the shit out of each other and then like you'll see like scuffs on their face and then maybe like their collar is a little bit tattered or something.
No, here like characters like jaws are broken and stuff. It's
like their face gets like swollen where it's like just unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Their clothes are just ripped.
Clothes are ripped. Yeah, it feels a lot more gritty.
Yeah, like the fights feel more like actual like brawls. Like they just they're on the ground
like
rolling around,
fights and anything.
like pulling each other's faces and shit.
There's a much grounded level of violence there.
Yeah. That being said, it's not a battle series.
No. The closest it comes is the boxing episode with Gonda. I really like Gonda, and especially the boxing episode, which is all about him and his character arc.
I think Gonda is definitely the one that's most kind of fleshed out and has like the clearest like character arc. He's presented very much as like a particular type of character, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's somebody who's just putting on this tough guy act that's secretly kind of a coward and uses these underhanded tactics to try and dispatch Eguchi, his rival. But you know, underneath he's like supposed to be kind of a decent guy, and he kind of realizes his mistakes and he's just kind of putting the cart before the horse.
Well, that goes for a lot of the characters in this show, is that they are really just decent guys.
Yeah.
Which their characterization kind of reminded me a bit of Ongaku in terms of like, they're like these delinquents and people are afraid of them, but they're not really going out of their way to intimidate or harass anyone. But then you also look at like Kenji in Ongaku and Eguchi in this are both kind of inconsiderate or oblivious of how their respective love interests might feel about like their actions or behaviors.
It's interesting because Eguchi's kind of enigmatic in that way, where at times he seems very oblivious, and then there's like times where he's like almost like mature beyond his years.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Shows like an emotional maturity that you wouldn't expect from somebody who's running around acting like a toddler, like throwing a tantrum.
Yeah. What I think kind of helped lends to Eguchi being this sort of enigmatic character is the fact that he's voiced by Kaneko Shiozawa.
Oh, yeah.
Which was an interesting choice. In episode 1, Kaneko Shiozawa voices Akira. But I guess for whatever reason, Eguchi's voice actor left the show or something. So Kaneko Shiozawa took over Eguchi's role. And I don't want to say that he's miscast, but there were quite a few points in the show where I'm watching it and I'm just thinking to myself, that just fucking sounds like Oberstein.
Are you saying that Eguchi did nothing wrong?
Of course.
It's kind of funny that you say that, because like his love interest, Suyama, is voiced by Hiromi Suru, who did Bulma in Dragon Ball.
Interesting.
And Madoka from Orange Road. So it's like Oberstein's banging Bulma, I guess. But with Gonda specifically, kind of going back to him, his arc kind of ties back into like what I was saying about lacking direction in your life and like role models. He kind of sees the error in his ways when he sees how Eguchi's kind of handling himself. When he frames Eguchi for the events in episode 1, he doesn't protest or whine about how it's not fair or, anything like that. He just kind of sucks it up and like faces the adversity head on. And Gonda's so moved by that he realizes he doesn't just want to be seen as like a leader. He wants to be that pillar to those around him that are looking up to him to like be a guiding force in their lives. And you see that influence in episode 2 when Gonda's confronted with an obvious lie. And even when he's like told the truth, he still kind of acts in his gang's best interest, because it's not really about the truth or who is like right or wrong. It's about being there for those who have put their trust in you even when they're wrong. It's about holding each other accountable in like their own way and being like a positive kind of masculine influence on each other's lives. And then like in episode 3, your favorite episode, we see him trying to make the person who first acknowledged him and gave him structure in his life when he was directionless and alone, just trying to make him proud. We basically see him having to like confront what we all kind of have to at some point, right? Where we kind of realize that our parents or our mentors are kind of getting older and frailer. It's something that, I've kind of had to think about myself, and as I've like noticed as I've gotten older, where I've noticed that like when I look at my parents, how I see my parents now is different from how I imagined my parents.
I mean, they lied to me about Santa Claus and shit. They can go fuck themselves, honestly, but I see what you mean.
Oh, you must have been one of those that found out in like their 20s.
I found out yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I think it speaks to like this desire that we all kind of have to, send those that we look up to most and are kind of like the guiding forces in our lives, send them off seeing the best of ourselves. But even in like the show, we see that it's not really about them seeing you at your best. It's just them seeing that you're going to be all right without them. But yeah, Shobaku kind of captures those feelings almost effortlessly, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a
definitely.
major kind of element of what makes the show stand out for me, at least.
If you like stuff like Ashita no Joe, this really hits that same vein of pathos.
Yeah. But like Gonda's just like the rival character, right?
Gonda's just the rival character, but he's the one we've been talking about the most.
But they flesh out pretty much every character in the show.
Pretty much everyone, yeah.
They all kind of have like moments where they just kind of interact with each other amongst themselves. Like it's not like they're all having to be around Eguchi. Like there are scenes where Harasawa and Sakurai are together, or like Akira and Murakawa.
Yeah, I think maybe my second favorite episode is the episode where Sakurai just gets like a love interest who doesn't like that he's like a delinquent, and the ultimate conclusion of the episode is bros before hoes.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
This is very much like a show where they are shown as being like overly competent. So it's interesting to see when they're kind of put into like just normal life situations. With Sakurai, you kind of see like his lack of like self-confidence and like shyness, where he has like this tendency to conform to others to try to make them like him.
Yeah.
Where he like suddenly grows this obsession with flowers because he has a crush on a girl working at a flower shop.
It's so nice. It's so sweet.
Ultimately, Shobaku is just a story of like unbridled youth.
Definitely, yeah.
All these events are just like a reflection of living one's life to like the fullest. they kind of reinforce this idea that you can't like go back to the days of your youth, and it's kind of our responsibility to let go of those youthful days and make way for those that are coming after us to enjoy their youth to the fullest. It's just all about embracing that kind of adolescent tendency to like question authority and kind of bend the rules to find their breaking point and just ultimately kind of like find their place in the world.
Yeah, which I guess it's fitting that the series ends with them graduating, because that is kind of like the end of an era, the end of youth. It's time to become an adult, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be real. This is just like a video essay, but you're talking to me. But I do have one question, though.
What's that?
This is never also explained in the series. Why is there just a guy that looks like Spock?
I don't know.